Now, we get the latest war in Ukraine now. There are fears that Russia could spark a direct war with NATO by intercepting ships in international waters and seeking to impose an economic stranglehold on Ukraine. Speaking to Politico, NATO's former Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, Admiral James Stavridis, says Russia's actions in the international waters of the Black Sea create a real risk of escalating this to a war at sea. It's not going to provide all the weapons and money for Ukraine, only to watch Russia strangle their economy with an illegal blockade. Tensions in the Black Sea have escalated dramatically since Russia unilaterally withdrew from a UN grain deal in July and warned that ships travelling to Ukrainian ports have been seen as military targets. Well, in response, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg accused Russia of dangerous and escalatory actions in the Black Sea. He was also referencing Russia's bombardment of Ukrainian ports. To discuss the situation in the Black Sea, we can speak to Michael Bociurkiw, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Centre. Thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So this sounds like a pretty stark warning. It is just a warning, but a pretty stark one that there could be a full conflict and NATO drawn into it here.
Well, you know, if that's what it takes to stop Mr. Putin from weaponizing food, from hijacking millions of tons of grain that are supposed to go to many poor countries, the Egypts, the Yemens, the Iraqs of the world, then so be it. I'd say let's escalate. Let's start getting armed escorts for bulk carrier ships across the Black Sea, because Mr. Putin and the Kremlin cannot get away with this. It's already gone way too far. I just crossed over from Ukraine into Moldova and went through that port area along the Danube that the Russians have been striking almost night after night. And you can see what's happening, Louis. The infrastructure, the roads are just packed with trucks because a lot of this grain and freight has had to move to the roads. And it's really affecting neighboring countries such as Moldova. It's unsustainable.
So you say it's unsustainable. What's the solution here then?
I think the solution is very clear, that Ukraine should go ahead to proceed with this unilateral so-called humanitarian corridor for ships across the Black Sea, supported by surveillance planes from NATO or Western allies or friendly neighboring countries, and if need be, armed escorts. And the other thing that has to happen, of course, is I was talking to a member of a crew last night in Odessa. Ship owners and crews need to be reassured, and also insurance companies, because, of course, the risks are very high. The Russians are, I think, even calling them cowboys, sea cowboys is a compliment. It's a lot worse. But they show very little restraint in terms of blocking these ships or threatening them. OK, so if the armed escort, one of the things you mentioned there, if that goes ahead, even if that risks a direct conflict between NATO and Russia, you think it's worth it? Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, the other thing we have to widen out the aperture a bit is that if Russia is allowed to get away with this, it will only encourage belligerent countries to do the same on other crucial waterways around the world. And it sends, again, a bad message to these parties. 50 years ago or many decades ago, hijacking of civilian airliners wasn't that well known until the KGB started doing it. So again, if this is allowed to happen without any penalties and without any kind of blockages, this is a bad sign. And one more quick thing, Louis, the other thing, of course, that is needed is more Patriot missile systems around Odessa area for it to be able to close the skies to those cruise missiles that are damaging the Ukrainian ports.
Understood. Michael Bociurkiw, thank you very much for coming on the programme. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to stay in the Black Sea area because dead dolphins